The morning light came through the tall windows of the genetics laboratory, and Dr. Minho sat alone at his desk with a cup of cold coffee that he had forgotten to drink. The computer screen in front of him showed numbers and letters that did not make sense. He had been a scientist for 23 years. He had studied the genetic code since he was a young man in university. He knew what normal looked like. This was not normal. The sample came from a woman. Her name was HFY. She had been found 3 days ago on a ship that was floating in space near Mars. The ship was old and broken. No one knew where it came from or how long it had been there. When the rescue team found her, she was alive. She was breathing. She was conscious. But when they brought her back to Earth and took her DNA sample, something very strange happened. Minho ran the test again. The machine made soft sounds as it worked. He watched the screen carefully. The results came back exactly the same as before. According to the computer, HFY did not exist. The system said her DNA did not match anyone in the database. It was like she was a ghost, a person who was there but not there, a shadow that could speak and move and think but had no real place in the world. "This is crazy," Minho whispered to himself. He was not a man who talked to machines, but today his hands were shaking a little bit. He called his colleague, Dr. Ji Woo. She arrived in the lab 30 minutes later with angry eyes. She was a woman who did not like to waste her time, and she did not believe in mistakes. When Minho showed her the results, she looked at the screen for a long time without saying anything. "Run it again," she said finally. They ran it 5 more times. Every time the same answer came back. HFY's DNA was there. It was real, but the system could not understand it. The computer was telling them that this woman should not exist, that she was impossible. The woman herself was waiting in a special room with thick glass walls. She was sitting very still on a white chair. She wore a white hospital gown because they had not given her anything else to wear. When Minho and Jiwoo came to talk to her, she looked up at them with calm eyes. She did not look scared or confused. She looked like a person who had been waiting for this moment. "Hello," HFY said. "I suppose you found the problem with my DNA?" Minho sat down across from her. There was a table between them and cameras in the corners of the room. Everything was being recorded. "Your genetic code does not match our database," he said carefully. "According to our system, you do not exist in any record from any country. There is no birth certificate. There is no family history. There is nothing." HFY smiled. It was a small smile, but it was real. "I know," she said. "I have never been in your database. I have never been in anyone's database. That was the whole point. That was why my mother and father chose to have me the way they did." Jiwoo leaned forward. "What do you mean, chose to have you the way they did?" "I was born in a place you do not know about," HFY explained. Her voice was very calm and soft. "My parents were part of a group of people who did not trust the government. They thought that governments wanted to know everything about everyone. They thought that if your DNA was on file, if your genetic code was recorded in a database, then you would never be free. You would always be controlled." Minho felt something cold move down his spine. "Are you telling us that your parents made you? That they created you to avoid genetic identification?" "Not created," HFY said. "That is the wrong word. I was born like anyone else. My mother carried me in her body. I was born in darkness, but I was born the same way you were born. The only difference is that I was made to be invisible to your machines." Jiwoo stood up and walked away from the table. She put her hand on the glass wall and looked out at the city far below the laboratory. "That is not possible," she said, but her voice was not strong. She did not sound like she believed her own words. "It is possible," HFY said. "It took them a long time to do it, many years, but they did it. And now there are many of us, thousands of us. We live in hidden places. We have families. We have children. And our children have children. We are becoming a new kind of human, a human that you cannot track, a human that you cannot control. Minho thought about this. He thought about what it meant. A whole group of people who were invisible to the technology that the world had built to see everything. A population that the government could never find because they could never be identified. The idea was both beautiful and terrifying. "Why did your ship crash?" he asked. "Why did you come here?" "It was damaged during a repair mission," Haiwan said. "We were trying to make contact with people on other worlds. We wanted to see if there were others like us. But our ship broke, and I was sent to find help. I am not sure what will happen to me now. I do not know what you will do with me." She said this last part very quietly, but there was something in her eyes that was very strong. She was not afraid, or if she was, she did not show it. Minho looked at Jiwoo. Jiwoo looked back at him. They did not say anything, but they did not need to. They both understood that everything had just changed. The world that they knew, the system of control and information that had been built over so many years, had just developed a crack. And through that crack, something new was coming through. Something that could not be put back. The cameras kept recording. The machines kept running. The laboratory kept working as it always did. But nothing would ever be the same again. A woman who did not exist had just walked into the world of the living, and she had brought with her a question that no one could answer. What happens when people stop being visible? What happens to a world that was built on the idea that everything could be seen when something arrives that cannot be seen at all? Haiwan sat very still in the white room. She was patient. She could wait. She knew that everything would unfold the way it was supposed to unfold. And in the laboratory outside, Dr. Minho stared at the computer screen and wondered what would come next. The secure building in Geneva was very old and very strong. Thick walls protected the people inside from the outside world. Haiwan had been in this place for 6 days now. She slept in a room with white walls and one small window that showed nothing but the sky. She ate food that came on trays. She answered questions from many different people who wore uniforms or business clothes or both. Today, Dr. Minho was with her again, and this time another person came with him. Captain Park Soo was a tall man with a straight back and serious eyes. He worked for the military. He had been at the meeting for many hours, listening to Haiwan speak about her people and where she came from. Now he sat across from her with a notebook and a pen, and his face was very hard and difficult to read. "How many?" he asked. "How many what?" Haiwan replied. "How many of you are there?" Park Soo wrote something in his notebook without waiting for her to answer. "You said there are thousands. Give us a number." Haiwan thought about this carefully. She did not want to lie, but she also did not want to say too much. "There are approximately 4,000 of us living in permanent locations. Maybe more now. My people keep having children." Minho closed his eyes. 4,000 people, invisible to every government system in the world. It was almost too much to think about. "Where?" he asked. "Where are they living?" "That I cannot tell you," Haiwan said very clearly. "If I tell you that, then you will be responsible for what you do with that information. I do not want that blood on your hands, Dr. Minho. You have been kind to me, but I am not sure that your government will be kind to my people." Park Soo put his pen down. "Miss Haiwan, you are not in a good position to make demands. You are a person who does not exist. Legally, you are nothing. Technically, we could do anything we want to you, and there would be no crime." Haiwan smiled. The same small smile she had shown before. "You could," she said, "but then my people will know. They are already asking about me. They are asking what you will do with me. And if something happens to me, then they will have to protect themselves. They will have to act. Is that what you want, Captain?" Park Soo did not answer, but his hand touched his pen again. Minho could see that the captain was thinking about this very carefully. He was a soldier. He understood the idea of threat and response. He understood that sometimes the wrong move could cause a war. "Tell us about them," Minho said. "Tell us about your people. Tell us how you live. Tell us how you became this way." Hye-won leaned back in her chair. Outside the window, the sun was going down. The city lights were starting to come on. She began to speak, and as she spoke, Minho's understanding of the world began to break apart slowly, piece by piece. "My parents were born in a time when governments were beginning to map the human genome," Hye-won said. At first, people were very excited. They thought this knowledge would help them cure diseases and stop suffering. My parents thought so too. But then they began to see what was really happening. Governments were building databases. They were recording genetic information. They were creating profiles of every person they could find. She paused and looked at Park Soo. "Your government started this work very early, Captain. So did many others. But my parents, they saw something that no one else seemed to see. They understood that genetic information was not like other kinds of information. It was the most personal thing a person could have. It was a map of who they were, written in nature itself. And if the government had that map, then they owned you. They could predict your health. They could predict your children. They could predict your future." "So they decided to hide?" Ji-woo asked. She had come back into the room quietly a few minutes before. "They decided to disappear," Hye-won said. "They gathered other people who felt the same way. They found places where no one would look for them. Old factories under the ground, caves in mountains, bases that had been abandoned by the military years ago. And then they did something very clever." "What?" Minho leaned forward. "They changed their DNA," Hye-won said. "They worked with a scientist, a man named Dr. Teo, who had become scared of what the world was doing with genetic science. He figured out that if you could create specific patterns in the genetic code, patterns that would look like errors to any computer scanning system, then those patterns would make a person invisible. The machines would reject the DNA as corrupted. The databases would not accept the information. A person could be alive and breathing and real, but they would not exist in any system." "That is not possible," Ji-woo said. But again, her voice was not strong. "It is very possible," Hye-won said. "All you need to do is add variations in the right places, not enough to change who the person is, not enough to hurt them, just enough to confuse the machines. Dr. Teo did this, and he passed the technique on to others. Now we all have these variations. We are all invisible." Park Soo was writing very fast now. "And you have been reproducing, creating more invisible people." "We have been living," Hye-won said. "We have been having children because that is what humans do. We have been building communities. We have been creating art and science and music. We have jobs. Some of us are teachers. Some of us are engineers. Some of us are doctors. We are not monsters, Captain. We are just people who chose to be private." "Private?" Ji-woo repeated. "That is a nice way to say hidden." "It is a better way," Hye-won said. "Hiding means you are doing something wrong. Privacy means you have decided what parts of yourself you want to share with the world. We did not hide our children away. We simply made a choice about how much we wanted to be seen." Minho thought about what she was saying. He thought about his own DNA sitting in a database somewhere. He thought about the government knowing everything about him, knowing his health before he did, knowing his children's future before they were even born. He thought about a world where nothing was private, where everything was known. And he thought about a world where a group of people had said no to all of that. "What do you want?" he asked suddenly. "Why did you come here? Why would you risk this?" "Because it was time," Hye-won said. "My people have been hidden for a long time, but hiding cannot last forever. We are growing in numbers. Soon you will find us anyway. We wanted to come forward. We wanted to say who we are. Before you discovered us and decided what we should be, we wanted to speak first. And now? Park Sue asked. Now that you have come forward, what happens? Now, Haewon said, you have to decide what kind of world you want to live in. A world where everything is known and controlled, or a world where people have the right to be private. That is the choice you have to make. The room became very quiet. Outside, the city lights grew brighter as the night grew darker, and Haewon waited for them to understand what she had just told them. She was patient. She could wait. She knew that the decision would take time. The news spread across the world like fire in dry grass. Governments that had never spoken to each other suddenly called emergency meetings. News channels showed the same image over and over again. A woman with calm eyes. A person who did not exist. A question that no one knew how to answer. Within 18 hours, Haewon had become the most important person on Earth. She was moved from the small room in Geneva to a much larger facility in a different country. This place was very heavily guarded. There were soldiers everywhere. There were cameras in every room and hallway. There were people watching her every moment of every day. The facility was designed to hold prisoners who were very dangerous. Now Haewon was the prisoner they held. But Haewon did not act like a prisoner. She acted like a guest who was waiting for a meeting. She sat in the gray chair in the gray room and spoke to the people who came to ask her questions. There were many people. Some were scientists. Some were government officials. Some were military officers who did not try very hard to hide their anger. The interrogations lasted for 18 hours, not all at one time, but in sessions throughout the day and night. The room had no windows. There was no way to know if it was day or night. The people asking questions kept changing, but Haewon's answers stayed the same. She did not become angry. She did not become tired, even though she must have been tired. She spoke about her people with patience and without shame. One man, General Kyo-sung, was particularly difficult. He was an older man with a hard face and scars on his neck from an old wound. He believed that Haewon and her people were a threat to national security. He believed they should be found and dealt with immediately. You are telling us that there are thousands of people living in secret, he said, his voice loud and harsh. People who cannot be found by our systems, people who cannot be controlled. This is terrorism. No, Haewon said very calmly. Terrorism is using violence to create fear. My people have hurt no one. We have lived quietly. We have asked for nothing from your world. We only wanted to be left alone. But you were not left alone, General Kyo-sung pointed out. You came forward. Now you are here. And everything is different. Yes, Haewon agreed. Now it is different. But it was always going to be different. You cannot hide forever. My people understood that. That is why we decided to tell you who we are rather than wait for you to discover us. This way, we control the story. This way, we can speak for ourselves. Minho was in the room for many of these interrogations. He had been given a special role. He was supposed to be the bridge between the scientists and the government. But more and more, he found himself defending Haewon's answers. He found himself understanding her point of view. And this was making some people very unhappy. On the third day of interrogation, Jiwoo came to find Minho in a small break room. She looked tired. Everyone looked tired, except for Haewon. They want to erase her genetic code from our records, Jiwoo said without any greeting. They want to create a virus that would destroy the non-indexing patterns in her DNA. They want to make her visible so she can be tracked. Minho felt cold. That would kill her. Not kill, Jiwoo said, but change her. Fundamentally change who she is. They are talking about it like it would be a medical procedure. But it is not medicine. It is torture. Have you told her? Minho asked. Not yet, Jiwoo said. But she will know soon. Someone will tell her. And then everything will change. Minho thought about Hai Wan. He thought about her sitting in that gray room, answering question after question, never becoming angry or defensive. He thought about her patience and her calm. And he realized that she had been waiting for this. She had known all along that this moment would come. During the next interrogation, they asked her directly. A woman named Dr. So Young, who worked for the government's health department, asked the question. "We are considering a genetic correction procedure," she said carefully. "A procedure that would make your genetic code readable by our systems. What do you think about that?" Hai Wan was quiet for a very long time. Her hands, which had been still before, began to shake very slightly. Minho could see her take several deep breaths. "I think," she said very slowly, "that it would be a crime against my people. I think it would be genocide, even if you do not call it that. Because if you change my genetic code, you will change who I am at the most basic level. You will be erasing the choice that my parents made. You will be saying that their choice was wrong. And if their choice was wrong, then I am wrong. And if I am wrong, then all of my people are wrong, and we should not exist." "But you do not exist now," General Kyo-sung said. "That is the whole point." Hai Wan looked directly at him. Her eyes were very sharp and very clear. "I exist," she said. "I am sitting here. I am breathing. I am speaking. I have thoughts and feelings and memories. I am different from what your machines can read, but that does not make me non-existent. It makes me private. And I prefer the term private." The room became completely silent. Even General Kyo-sung had no answer for that. That night, guards came to Minho's quarters. They told him that he was being removed from the interrogation team. They told him that his thinking had been compromised. They told him that he could not be trusted. But they did not arrest him. Instead, they gave him a choice. He could leave the facility and go home and never speak about any of this again. Or he could stay and face the consequences of helping a prisoner of the state. Minho thought about this very carefully. He thought about Hai Wan sitting in the gray room. He thought about the choice that her parents had made so long ago to be private. And he made his own choice. He walked out of the facility in the middle of the night. He did not take anything with him. He just walked out through the gates and disappeared into the darkness. And when morning came, the government realized that Dr. Minho was gone. They did not know where he had gone. They did not know if they would ever see him again. But Hai Wan, still sitting in her gray room, smiled when she heard the news. The safe house was in the mountains, far from any city. It was an old building made of stone, the kind of place that people might not look at twice when they drove past it. Inside, it was warm and filled with the smell of food cooking. There were maps on the walls and computers in several of the rooms. This was a place where people could work and think and plan. Minho had been here for 3 days when Jiwoo arrived. She came in the evening looking over her shoulder, jumping at every sound. She had taken the same risk that Minho had taken. She had chosen to walk away from her position, her career, and her future. She had chosen to help Hai Wan. "They are looking for us," Jiwoo said as soon as she saw Minho. "I was followed. I was not very good at losing them, but I think I did eventually. They will probably figure out where I went, but not immediately." "Then we do not have much time," a voice said behind them. Both scientists turned around. There was a man standing in the doorway. His name was Kitai. He was older than Minho, with gray hair and a face that had lived many years. He was one of the leaders of the Uncounted. He had come from one of the hidden places to meet with Minho and Jiwoo. "Hai Wan told us you would come," Kitai said. "She said that you would understand, that you would see what needed to be done." "We do not even know what we are doing here," Minho said. "We made a decision very quickly, maybe too quickly." "You made the right decision," Kitai said. "Hai Wan is still in that facility. They are not going to let her go. They are going to use her to find us, or they are going to kill her to keep her quiet. Either way, she is in danger, and we need to get her out. Jiwoo sat down heavily on a chair. This is insane, she said. They have an entire army guarding that facility. How could we possibly break her out? Another voice spoke up. Because she is going to help us. A young woman came out of the back room. Her name was Sunmi. She was in her 20s with bright eyes and a small scar on her left arm. She was a computer engineer trained from childhood to work with all kinds of systems. HFY has been sending us messages, Sunmi explained. She has been passing notes to some of the guard staff who are sympathetic to our cause. Yes, there are some. Not everyone who works for the government agrees with what is happening to her. The guards know that she is a person. They know what the government is planning to do to her, and some of them think it is wrong. You want to get her out using the inside help, Jiwoo said, beginning to understand. We want to get her out using a combination of inside help and technical knowledge, Sunmi said. But we also need scientific help. We need to know exactly what they are planning to do to her. We need to know their procedure, and we need to know how to stop it. Jiwoo looked at Minho. There was a long moment where they did not speak. They just looked at each other, understanding what this meant. If they helped with this, they would be criminals. They would be hunted. They would probably never be able to go back to their old lives. But they had already made that choice when they walked away from the facility. I can get that information, Jiwoo said finally. I have a contact in the government office who is working on the genetic procedure. I can reach her. I can ask her for the details. She will be scared, but she will help. What about you? Kitae asked Minho. What will you do? Minho thought about HFY in her gray room. He thought about her patience and her calm. He thought about the choice her parents had made to be private, and he understood that this was his choice too. This was his moment to decide who he was going to be. I will help, he said. Whatever needs to be done, I will help. Over the next week, the plan came together. It was a plan that required perfect timing and perfect luck. It required people in different places to do different things at exactly the same moment. It required a trust between strangers that was very difficult. Sunmi worked with someone inside the security system of the facility. This person was a data technician named Min Woo, who had become disgusted with what was happening to HFY. Min Woo created a small break in the security protocols, a moment where the cameras would show a different image, where the alarms would not sound. It was only a 3-minute window, but it would be enough. Jiwoo got the information about the genetic procedure from her contact, a woman named Dr. Hana, who was also horrified by what her government was doing. The procedure was scheduled to happen on a Tuesday morning. It would take several hours. While it was happening, HFY would be unconscious and unable to help herself. Minho studied the information about the procedure and understood what had to be done. He understood that HFY could not be allowed to wake up in that facility. If she woke up, she would be trapped, and they would use her to find her people. We have to get her out during the procedure, he told the others, while she is unconscious, while the doctors think they are working on her. That will require someone inside the medical unit, Kaite said. I will go, Sunmi said. She had not said much since they began planning, but now she spoke with a clear voice. I have family in the uncounted. Cousins. HFY came forward to protect them. I will bring her back. They planned everything in detail. They created maps. They created lists of timing. They created backup plans for the backup plans. And then, on a Tuesday morning, everything happened exactly as they had planned it. Min Woo created the break in the security. Sunmi walked through the corridors of the facility like she belonged there. She had false papers that Jiwoo had helped her create. The papers said she was a medical assistant, and she looked the part in her medical clothes. She went into the room where HFY was being prepared for the procedure. Hye-won was already unconscious. The doctors and nurses were already working. No one noticed when Sunmi wheeled a gurney into the room and then wheeled it back out with a patient on it. No one noticed until it was too late. By the time the security system came back to normal 3 minutes later, Sunmi and Hye-won were already moving through a service tunnel that led outside the facility. By the time anyone realized what had happened, they were already in a vehicle driving toward the mountains. The next day, Hye-won woke up in the safe house. She was in a clean bed with soft pillows. There was sunlight coming through a real window. And Min-ho and Ji-woo were sitting beside her, looking very tired but very relieved. "Welcome back," Min-ho said. Hye-won looked at them both, and she smiled. The same small smile she had always had. "I knew you would understand," she said. "I knew you would choose the right side." The night before the broadcast, no one slept. The safe house in the mountains had become something much larger than it was before. More people had come. The uncounted had arrived from hidden places across the world. They had brought equipment and data and documents. They had brought their stories. Hye-won walked through the rooms, talking to people she had never met but who shared her invisible blood. An old woman who had been born in an underground facility 50 years ago, a man with 2 children who had never had a birth certificate, a teacher who had spent her entire life teaching students but had no official record of existing. They all had the same calm acceptance of their situation, but they also had something else. They had hope. Sunmi had set up the broadcast equipment in the largest room. She had worked for 3 days without sleeping, creating a signal that could not be blocked or stopped. It was a signal that would go out to every television, every computer, every screen around the world. At exactly 5 in the morning, the signal would activate, and then the world would know the truth. Dr. Min-ho was nervous. He kept checking his equipment even though there was nothing wrong with it. Ji-woo was calm on the surface, but Min-ho could see that her hands were shaking slightly. They had agreed to be part of the broadcast. They had agreed to stand beside Hye-won and speak about what they had learned. This meant that they would be branded as traitors. This meant that their lives would never be normal again. "Are you ready?" Kite asked Hye-won as the time came closer. "I have been ready my whole life," Hye-won said. "I was born for this moment." At 5 in the morning exactly, Sunmi gave the signal. Screens all over the world lit up. People who were just waking up to start their days suddenly saw a woman's face. People who were working the night shift saw the image on their computer screens. People in offices and homes and streets saw it on every screen they could see. Hye-won sat in a chair. Behind her stood Min-ho and Ji-woo. Around her, though most people did not see them clearly, stood members of the uncounted. They were visible in the image but not identified. They were there, but not recorded. "My name is Hye-won," she said. Her voice was very clear and very calm. "I am here to tell you about my people. I am here to tell you about the uncounted." For 45 minutes she spoke. She told about her parents and their fear of government control. She told about Dr. Teo and his discovery. She told about the hidden places where her people lived. She told about children being born and growing up and having their own children. She told about a life that was real and normal and human, but invisible to the systems of the world. "For decades," she said, "your governments have demanded that you be visible. They have wanted to know your genetic code, your health, your family history. They have wanted every part of you recorded in their databases. My parents rejected this. They said no. And they gave me and thousands of others the right to say no as well." She paused and looked directly into the camera. Millions of people around the world felt like she was looking directly at them. "We are not dangerous," she said. "We are not criminals. We are not the enemy. We are simply people who wanted to be private. We wanted the right to choose what parts of ourselves we share with the world and what parts we keep for ourselves. This is a right that every human should have. The broadcast showed data. It showed genetic information that was completely normal in every way, except that it could not be read by government systems. It showed medical records that the uncounted had kept for themselves, proving that they were healthy and normal. It showed pictures of families and children and real people living real lives. And then, very carefully, the broadcast showed something that shocked everyone. It showed the procedure that the government had planned to perform on Haiwan. It showed the scientist who had designed it. It showed the documentation. It showed what they had been about to do to a human being in the name of making her visible. They wanted to change who I am, Haiwan said, to make me readable by their machines. They wanted to erase the choice my parents made for me. They wanted to erase my freedom. And when I would not let them do it, they called me non-existent. They said that because I could not be found in their database, I was not a real person. Her eyes were very bright now, but she did not cry. I am real, she said. I am more real than any record in any database. I am real because I think and feel and love and dream. I am real because people care about me. I am real because I am speaking to you now, and you can hear me. I am real because I refuse to be erased. And I am real because I prefer the term private. Around the world, the broadcast was causing chaos. Governments were trying to stop it, but they could not. Sunmi's technical work had been perfect. The signal could not be stopped. It could not be traced. It could only be watched and listened to as the truth spread across every screen on the planet. In the safe house in the mountains, Kite was watching the broadcast on a small screen. There were tears on his face. She did it, he said to no one in particular. She actually did it. But Minho and Jiwoo were watching Haiwan, not the screens. They were watching her hands, which had stopped shaking. They were watching her face, which had become peaceful. She had released the truth that she had been carrying her whole life. She had finally stopped being invisible. She had finally been seen. When the broadcast ended, the world was not the same anymore. There were protests. There were arguments. There were governments demanding that the uncounted reveal their locations. But there were also millions of people who were asking a new question, a question that no government had wanted to answer before. What if freedom meant the right to be private? What if being human meant the right to choose what was known about you and what remained hidden? The broadcast had changed everything, and it had happened not with violence or force, but with truth.